Hi, guys. I am Sharon Tillman here. Thank you so much for joining another episode of A Journey to Identity. Happy Tuesday. I hope everyone is having an amazing day again on today and an amazing week. I know I come on here once a week and kind of say have an amazing day, but I hope you guys are having an amazing week overall. Amazing week definitely doesn't mean that you don't have things that happen. It definitely doesn't mean that life doesn't life. It definitely doesn't mean that sometimes things don't fall out of place. It just means that you're embracing every single day, every single moment. It means that you are taking life for what it's worth, and that you're finding the joy and the contentment of where you are in your particular season, because all of our seasons look different. um Really quick update, I started my second self-esteem therapeutic group on last night, and it was absolutely amazing. I'm so excited for the ability to be able to steward that group. Like, really, it's something about it that I don't necessarily know if I would have ever like enjoyed it as much as I do. I never saw myself really being like a facilitator in that way. I never saw myself really doing groups. I just knew that I was good with people. But it has been an absolute joy, and I've highly enjoyed it so much so far. And so last night was another amazing night, and so I'm excited about it. I have a few cohorts that I have coming up that I'm super excited about. So I want you guys to stay tuned for that. I have one that is coming up for divorced women. So if you know anyone who is divorced, who currently is going through a divorce, someone who's been divorced for a while and they're still trying to find themselves, or they're still trying to figure out those pieces of their life that they feel like went with their divorce. If you know anybody, please look for please stay tuned for details for this cohort. It will be starting in just a few weeks, and I'm very, very excited about what's to come out of it and how women are going to be helped in the midst of it. A lot of women are so tied to their marriage in a form of their identity. And this is a way for you to go through this cohort and to see that they are two separate entities, and that your identity isn't fascinated in, and there's still purpose in you. And so I'm pretty excited about that. And so, like anything identity, it gets me excited. I just want you guys to know, like, anything that helps people to know who they are, anything that really helps people to find, like, to have an understanding of who they are, where they belong, what they're supposed to be doing according to God. What does God say about you? Those are my areas. Those are the things that I absolutely love to do. I absolutely love to empower and encourage, and to uplift, because ultimately I remember what it was like to be in that place. The whole purpose of me even sharing this particular journey with you is because I know the steps that it took for me to get to the place that I am. I know the steps that it took for me to believe in the identity that I have according to Christ, and not the identity that I wanted, or the identity that I kind of put on for myself by way of titles and status, and what I thought or what I felt like the world was saying that I needed to do. And so I know that this is the particular season where God is saying, like, if you don't know who you are in me, then you're not going to be able to make it, because culture is up and down. The world is like topsy turvy in a way. Things are things can we can only expect for things to go in a different direction of what we know, right? And so when things start to change and when things start to happen, if you're not rooted in the thing that you've been called to be rooted in, if you're not rooted in your identity in Christ, when things start to happen and when things start to be taken away, then you'll go away with it. And so God wants to build that foundation within each and every one of us. And I'm so grateful to just be one of the vessels that He's chosen to use to do so. So I love it here. I absolutely love it here. I absolutely love stewarding these groups. I love even empowering people when it comes to my journey and how I got here. And I'm still growing. I'm still going. There's still a process for me. I don't stop here just because I'm here. I keep going. And so God wants you to start wherever you are and just know that you can keep going and you can keep growing, because who He's called you to be, it doesn't change. It doesn't change based on your circumstance. It doesn't change based on what you have or what you don't have. It doesn't even change upon your condition. Matthew 5, my bishop preached that on Sunday, and how it doesn't even change based on a condition. It's the stance. My stance is blessed. If you read Matthew 5, you'll understand that this is my stance, in regardless of my circumstance, regardless of my situation, regardless of what's happening around me. And that is what God's saying as far as our identity goes. In spite of what happens, in spite of who comes and who goes, in spite of a marriage or a divorce, the birth of a child or the loss of a child, right? Because we all go through different areas and seasons and we all have different crosses to bear within our lives. But no matter what happens, your stance is who He's called you to be. And I believe that that is what God wants us to know in this season. And so again, I'm grateful to be one of the vessels that He has chosen to help bring that forth in the earth. And so, yeah, I'm pretty excited about that, right? So we'll jump back into our journey. We had 3 things, right? So I told you 1 and I told you 2. And so at this particular point, John and I don't know if John understands or if John realizes where I am, right? I think we've been through so many things within our marriage. In all honesty, I believe that John was just like, she's going to get over it. She's going to get over it. Like, we'll get past this. Like, there's no way she's going to walk away from me. And I had given John, honestly, I had given John the right to feel that way, because there were so many different areas and moments within our life where I stood by him when I know that I should have walked away. I stood by him and I stood firm for our marriage when I knew that, this was not something that John was prioritizing. Like, if we just be completely honest, sometimes we wonder why people do us a certain way, but then we never stop to ask ourselves, what are we giving off? What are we what are we showing them that will say that I'm giving you permission to treat me like this? Like, we may not come out of our mouths and say, I give you permission to mistreat me, or I'm giving you permission to walk over me, or I'm giving you permission to do whatever it is that we're doing. But our actions and what we allow is saying, or even our response to things that are happening is saying that I'm granting you permission. And so with John, I was giving John permission to treat me this way from years and years and years of this behavior. And so I don't know if John knew to the extent, right, of where I was, because he's like, we've been here before, she'll get over it. Like, I've lied before, she'll get over it, right? And so I remember even having a conversation, and I think I was talking to my best friend or either my first lady, I can't remember. And I was like, listen, I just know that for me, if I had been through the things that he had been through, where I would be, I feel like I would be like, and we say these things not being in this situation, but I love God. Now, the love that I have for God today, I loved God then, but the way that I am with him now is definitely different, right? But I always say, like, if God would have spared my life in that way, to just think about all of the things that John had been through, to literally, lose life on that floor for 15 minutes, and then God to bring you back. And now you're able to even be alert and to know who you are and to know who people are around you. And you've been through the hospital and the long care facility and the rehab, and now you've come home and your family is here and you've got support and you've got, like, you're surrounded by all of the things. It's like, how can you not? Right? Like, I feel like I would be, I think I even used for an example, I was like, listen, they would be like, Sharon, you can't dwell in the spirit always, baby. You got to go home. Like, you can't You can't even be in church all the time. Like, you gotta go home. Like, you can't just like prostrate all day. Like, you gotta go to work. Like, like I think I use that as an example to be like, oh my God, like, to just, oh God, everything, right? For that. So getting to the leading up of the very thing that was the cause of our marriage demise. After having a conversation with this family, after all of the things coming to a head about different things that John had been lying about, just not really knowing if I could trust him, and if I can trust him, how far can I trust him, and to what extent can I trust him, and all of the things. I remember getting to that place of just not understanding. And I'm like, God, clearly I don't know what you want from me. Like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. And like, sometimes we find ourselves in situations and we're praying about something, right? And you have to use discernment to know which is which. But there are times when we can be praying about situations in our life, and these situations are clearly falling apart. Like, and it's like, the more that we pray, the more that they're falling apart. We really have to ask God, like, we have to pray our prayers differently. We have to word them differently. And instead of praying for God to work things out, and for always praying for God to fix what's broken, we need to ask God if this brokenness is an indication that this is not where we're supposed to be. God, if this is what you want, align it, work it out, like, give us a clear sign. Because clearly there were years and years and years of me praying for my marriage. I can remember from the very beginning of marriage, not even knowing how to pray, not even knowing how to go to the Father, not even knowing what to do, really, right? Because if I haven't talked about, once I get through this, I want to talk about what it looks like to be a wife. I wasn't privy to like how to pray for your spouse. I wasn't even privy how to talk to your spouse. I wasn't privy on a lot of things. And a lot of things get revealed to me a little bit later on, because when people ask you, especially once you've been divorced, people will ask you like, what was the cause of your marriage or your divorce? And a lot of times we're so quick to blame other people, but if we can't self-evaluate to say, okay, like, what was my part in this, right? Because we all play a part. Even if solely you feel like it was their fault, you still had a part. And until you can acknowledge your part, you haven't gotten the very thing out of it that you were supposed to get. So I can even remember just like praying and just like being so confused, because I'm like, God, I don't know what to do. Like, I feel like I'm trying very hard. I even talked about being weak and weary in your well doing. Like, I'm trying so hard and I'm so broken. Like, God, what is happening to me right now? So it felt like the more that I prayed about it, the more it just was not working out, right? It was just like, I don't know what's happening, but it's just not working. So I remember this particular night, I'll never forget it. I worked a part-time job. So 3 nights a week I would go to work. And typically John's sister would come over to the house, but the more that John was starting to, become more alert, the more John was, starting to get to a point where he could be, by himself, like, she wouldn't come. So this particular night, she did not come. The kids were at home with him, and all of the things were done. I don't think I left until like 8:30, 9 o'clock, because it's a night job. So at this point, I'm preparing myself to go to work. All of the things are done. So John is in his room, which is downstairs, because he's still not able to walk up and down the steps as of yet. John was getting a lot better. We had got a boot for his foot. So he was getting a lot better with, taking his steps. He was no longer just in the wheelchair. I think at this point he had done, got to the walker, either even the walking, pushing stage, or he had the walker, like the walking stick. So he was able to hold up, his body weight with the stick and things like that. So he was doing a lot better. So I go to work this night, and I'm at work. I'm doing the things that I do at work. My phone is always on, but it's on vibrate when I'm at work, so it's not ringing out loud. And I don't think I had my watch on this particular night. I typically wear my watch, so if my phone rings or something, it comes to my watch and I can see it if my phone is not on me, because at this point my hands are busy. But I didn't have my watch on this particular night. And when I get back into the bedroom, I get to the room and my son has called me like several times. And so I panic, of course, like, oh my God, something's wrong. What's going on? So I call my son back and all I can hear is a bunch of commotion in the background. And I'm like, what in the world is happening? What is going on? And so my son is like, Mom, are you on the phone with Dad? And I'm like, no, why? What's wrong? What's happening? And he's like, Mom, Dad is talking to a woman on the phone. And I could hear John in the background saying, no, I'm not. You need da 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 da, like whatever. And like he's arguing with his son. My son, clearly 16, I think at this point. And he's arguing back with his dad. And he's like, no, then show me your phone. Give me your phone. And he's like, I'm not giving you anything. You better get out of here. And I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. What is going on? And I'm like, son, you need to go upstairs right now. And I could hear my daughter in the background, and my daughter is like, my mom is so good to you, my mom does all of this for you, like, and I'm like, hey, you need to get your sister, you need to go upstairs, and you need to go upstairs now. Get your sister, go upstairs now. You need to go in the room, you need to close the door, and you do not need to come out clearly until I am home. Do not come out. So I walk them upstairs, stay on the phone with them while they get upstairs. They get upstairs, they get in the room. Everybody's in the same room. My baby girl was just crying because at this point she's so scared. They had already sent her upstairs and she was crying. She was scared. It's just a lot of things happening. Emotions are everywhere. Everything is flying. And clearly, I'm still trying to figure out exactly what's going on. So I get off the phone with the kids and I call John. And I'm like, John, what is going on? And he's like, no, the kids was saying that I was on the phone with a woman. And I'm like, so were you on the phone with a woman? And he's like, yeah, I was talking to someone that we both know. I'll, keep them nameless. And he's like, yeah, I was talking to someone that, I was talking to this person. They was calling to check on me just to see if I was okay. And they walked in and thought they heard something different. And I said, okay. I said, well, John, I want you to know I'm going to call this person. And I said, if I call this person and this person has not spoken to you, you were not on the phone with this person, I want you to know that we are finished, right? We're finished. This is it. We're done. And he was like, well, you don't have to worry about that because I know who I was on the phone with. I don't have no reason to lie, all of these things. And I'm like, okay. Well, let me get off because I need to call back and I need to check on the kids. So at this point, I get off the phone with John. I call back to check on my children. I have to make sure that they're okay. They're highly upset. I'm asking what happened. My daughter is telling me that she came downstairs. And so the way that you come downstairs in our house, as you're getting to the bottom of the stairs, the spare bedrooms just kind of sits like on this side. And so with the door being open, as she's coming down the stairs, she can hear John on the phone. And John is on FaceTime. And they can hear John on the phone and they can hear the woman on the phone and they can hear the things that the woman is saying. And so she goes back upstairs and she gets her brother and they both come down and they're standing at the bottom of the stairs and John can't see them at the bottom of the stairs from where the bedroom is angled. Like they can hear in the bedroom, but he can't see them listening. So clearly, I guess he thought that he was in the clear. You're pretty bold, first of all, to be on FaceTime with someone while your kids are right upstairs, not knowing when they're going to come up and down. Maybe in his mind, he was like, well, my wife isn't here, so if the kids come down, I can pretend that it's somebody else, or I can hear them coming down so I won't get caught. I don't know what was going through John's mind, right? So she's like, I go upstairs, I get my brother, and we stand at the bottom of the steps and we're listening on the conversation. And mom, that's when we were calling you. And so they called me several times. I didn't answer, of course, because I said I left my watch at home. And so they're calling me and they're calling me and they're calling me. And that's why they was calling me to see if it was me on the phone. But they was like, Ma, it didn't sound like you, but we still wanted to make sure. And so they're upset, they're angry, and all of the things. So I get them settled, I get them together. They finally get to a place where they calmed down enough to just be able to like lay down because there's still school the next day, right? And I feel like this was a Sunday. It was a Sunday night. So there was school Monday morning. So I get everything settled at work. And once everything is settled down at work, I make a phone call to the individual that John said he was on the phone with. And so I call her and I said, hi, Miss Such and Such, how are you? And she said, oh my goodness, baby, I'm so good. How are you? I've been meaning to call you and check in with John. And one thing that I knew about this person was I've talked to her several times throughout the midst of John's, incident. And every time I've talked to her, I've always been the communicator for them. Like John, of course, couldn't talk for a while. When he finally did come home, I would always, like let her know because he's done a lot of work for her. So she's almost like a family friend at this point, right? I guess if you're going to lie, you should lie about somebody that I don't have access to. You definitely shouldn't lie about someone that I clearly have access to. So she was like, oh my goodness, baby, I've been meaning to call you and to check up on John. How's it been? And I was like, well, that's why I was calling. I was like calling to see if you had had an opportunity to speak with him because I know you had been saying that you couldn't wait to like talk to him. And she was like, and let me be clear, right? As I'm telling my story, I just want to be very clear because I did not call this lady and be like, hey, John said that y'all were on the phone at this time tonight. Is that true? No, because that ain't how we play games, right? Like mature grown women know that this is not what we're doing. Like we're not doing it like this. When we're clear in what's happening, there's a certain way that you move, right? So anyway, I was like, just wanting to check in. I know you wanted to talk to John. Just wanted to see if you've had an opportunity to call him. And she was like, no, I have not. I've been wanting to talk to him, but I have not. And I said, well, you know what? You should give him a call because he would absolutely love to hear from you. And she was like, that's what I'm going to do, baby. I'm actually going to give him a call tomorrow. Do you think he'll be? And I was like, he would love to hear from you tomorrow. So you should call him. And so we caught up just a little bit more. And then her and I got off the phone. And so I immediately called John. And I said, hey, I just got off the phone with her and you lied. I said, so I promise you this time I'm done. I'm done. And he was like, no, that's not true. And I don't know what kind of liar you have to be to keep lying about something when you've been busted and you continue to lie. So I don't know if people in your life have made you feel like that you could lie your way out of a lie. If they feel like if they've made you feel that you're that good that you can lie your way out of a lie, even though the clearest evidence is there. It's almost like a murderer or someone who's on trial for murder getting caught on surveillance. Like all of the evidence is there, but we're still going to argue that it wasn't you, right? That's what comes to my brain when I'm thinking about this story. But John was very clear. He was very, very clear in he's not going to admit that he wasn't on the phone with this lady. He's not going to admit that he's lying at this point. And so I get off the phone with John and I text his sister and I say, hey, can you come by my house tomorrow with your car and make sure that your car is emptied out? And she was like, oh Lord, like what did John do now? Every time her and I talked, this was her thing because for some reason they knew how John was, but it was easier to just have an issue with me instead of just holding John accountable. That's what I'll say. I'm not privy to all of the things that they said to John when I wasn't around. I'm not privy to if they ever held him accountable or held him to a standard. I'm not privy to those things. All I know is if they ever did, they never brought it to me. And they always made an issue with me as if John was always right. Right? So I told her, I said, John is a liar. John is a cheater. And I am done with him. So I want you to come to my house tomorrow with your car empty so that you can grab John and all of his belongings. I said, you guys wanted him. Now you can have him. And so she texted me back and she was like, I don't know what's going on, but I'll come tomorrow when I get off work. She was like, I'll take him to my mom's house. Maybe you guys just need some time. I'm not sure. And I said, no, we don't need time. I'm divorcing John and I need you to come and grab him. So at this point, let me just say, at this point, all of John's things were packed up, right? I think I neglected to say that after all of the other lies and things that were starting to take place, my son thinking that, he saw, which clear as day, he saw his dad texting a woman as we're driving to the beach. Like after all of these things, John is completely packed up in this house, right? So John hadn't been upstairs since prior to his incident because he couldn't walk. So I have cleaned out the closet, right? All of John's things in my closet were in trash bags. Everything that John owned up these stairs, honey, I had already clearly done packed it up. I'm telling you, I knew that this was happening. I just didn't know when, how, and I definitely didn't know that it would be to this extent. So when I tell her to come and get him because he's already packed up, I clearly was aware of the fact that he was already packed up. He was very ready to go. Maybe he wasn't ready, but I had already prepared him to be ready to go. So the next morning, so when I'm telling her this, she's like, okay, I'm going to come by tomorrow. Like, I'm hoping that you guys can work this out or whatever. And I don't even think I responded to that, honestly. So that night, as I'm going through work, I'm thinking about all of the things. And I remember just praying and just crying out and being like, okay, God, I don't like this. Like all of my years, right? Dealing with infidelity, all of my years being disrespected, like all of my years just going through this. It was one thing for me to go through this thing and my children not be privy, right? They're not privy to the disrespect of their dad. They're not privy to the fact that, he's talking to other women. They're not even privy to the things that I found clearly in the laptop as I'm going through this situation, right? As I'm looking for our Aflac information and I find all of these things in these emails from women and where he's met up with women and had intercourse with women, like these kids aren't privy to any of that, any of these things. Even to this day, they're not privy of that. So I'm like, how is it even possible that I can try my best to protect them so much that like I'm allowing him to be disrespectful to me? Just don't disrespect me in front of the kids. And I'm trying my hardest to protect him from the very thing that he turns around and do anyway. And so I just want to interject there because how often, right, when I think about my life and when I go back and think about my whole reasoning for even wanting to marry John, like John represented things that I longed for, yes. But John also was a clear indication of me not wanting to be like my mother. My mother never was married. My mom had kids. My mom has 4 kids. All 4 of us have different dads. And I never had a close relationship with my mom. So for me, I always was like, I don't want to be like her, not even understanding why she was the way she was, not really understanding, her point of view in anything. I'm just looking from the perspective of a daughter. You're supposed to be my mother. I wanted more for you so I could have more for me. And clearly I don't want to be like that. I told the Lord, right? Not even understanding his character and who he was and how he works and all of the things. I said, I'm getting married and I'm going to do it the right way. And if I do it the right way, then it's going to be different for me. It's going to work out. And so, how often do we still take things into our own hands? And like we try our best. This is why the Bible even says, many are the plans, but it's the Lord plan that prevaileth, right? Because so often we make our own plans, we make our own goals, and we don't input these detours. We think if I do it by the books, it's going to work out for me by the books. Like there should be no other way. If I study for a test and all of the answers are coming directly out of the book, and if I study the book, I should pass the test, right? That is the way that we feel, but that is not how life always works. It doesn't work like that for us all the time. So clearly within my mind, I'm thinking if I get married and all of my kids have the same dad, and if my kids grow up in a two-parent household, then I'm doing something for them that wasn't done for me, and things are going to work out and things are going to be better for them than it was for me. And clearly those were my plans, but it wasn't the plan of the Lord. And it could have been, right? Because somewhere along the line, it could have been the plan and John failed. It could have been what God had for me and John said no. Because everybody gets choice. Everybody gets free will. And so it could have been like, okay, this is what I want. And John is like, yeah, no, I don't want that. I want to do my own thing. And it derailed the plan, right? But because God never misses, he never ever misses, then there's always Romans 8:28. All things working together for the good, the bad, and the ugly. However, God always has the ability to work things out. And so when I think about how I really, really tried, how I really, really wanted to do things differently so that my children would have a different outcome, I thought raising my children in a two-parent household would give them a leg up. It would give them a better foundation, that they would have what they needed when it comes to two parents being able to show up, and all of the things that I just didn't have when I was growing up, all of the things that I didn't have, clearly all of the things that I knew that I wanted, that I desired, that I even needed, right? All of those things, they would have that. But again, that was my plan. It was just my plan. So I get off work that morning and I'm just crying and I'm just praying and I'm crying, and I'm probably doing more talking than listening at this point, right? Because I'm just like getting all of my feelings and emotions out with God, and like I'm expressing how angry I am and like how hurt I am. My feelings are hurt and all of the things. And so I remember asking God, I said, Lord, what do you want me to do? If you give me permission to choose myself, I'm choosing me. And I know you guys are probably like, because even when I think back on it, I'm like, Sharon, clearly you had already said that you were done. But there was still something inside of you that felt like, and this is sometimes when we don't really understand the Bible in its totality. We don't understand. We get so caught up in religion. Sometimes we get caught up in how God feels about divorce, how people feel about divorce, what people are going to think, what's going to happen to your kids if they go through a divorce, because you hear other people's stories. And it's like, you clearly know what you want. You even know what you need, but you're afraid to go and get that thing because you don't know what life is going to be like on the other side. You know the things that you're dealing with now. You know the moments where you're unhappy. You know the moments where you desire better and you wish that you had better. You lie in the bed sometimes feeling more single than a single woman because you're empty and you're not whole. All of these things can be very true, and we will still hold on to something because we're afraid of what's on the other side. And so I remember clear as day asking God, if you give me permission to choose me, I'll choose me. But I need your permission. And just as clear as day as I am talking on this podcast, God told me to choose me. I'll never forget it. I feel like it was one of the most clearest times I've ever heard God before in my whole life. Almost to the point where it was a little scary. And so I remember coming home from work that morning, and I went in there where John was into the bedroom. And John came in, and I went into John's bedroom, and John woke up while I was in there. And he grabbed my hand, and he was like, "You tired?" And I was like, "No, I'm not. I'm fine." And he was like, "You gonna lay down?" And I was like, "No, I'm not." Because this was my part-time job, so I still had a full-time job that I had to go to. And so I think I had to be to work really early, so I never really had time to like get in the bed and go to sleep. But there were times where I could like maybe get in the bed with him and like lay down, and we could have a moment before it was time for me to go right back into my next day of getting the kids up for school and getting them ready and making sure all of those things were done, dropping my daughter off at daycare, and then going to work. And so I was like, "No, I'm not this morning. I'm not getting in the bed. I'm not laying down." And as he's holding my hand, I can remember him saying, "Well, I love you." And it was the weirdest "I love you," not that I had never heard it before, just in that moment of all of the things that had transpired the night before. I can't remember, honestly, the last time he just grabbed my hand and said, "I love you," like that. I couldn't remember. And I'm sitting here like, with everything that just transpired last night, do you think I forgot that? Like, I clearly have not forgotten that. So I was just like, "I love you too, John." And so I walk on out of the room, and I go upstairs to kind of get myself ready and then prepare all of the things that I prepare between myself and the kids, and then John, because John still has, people who come. I don't remember if we still had a nurse at this point coming, but my sister would come sometimes, his mom would come sometimes, my mom would come sometimes. So at this point, it's like whoever's coming, I'm preparing for them to come also. And so I go off to work, and I go to work, and I go throughout the day, and then I leave work, and then I come back home. And I remember even throughout the day, John called several times. He checked in several times, almost like he was trying to. I have a friend who's trying to check the temperature. And I feel like John was trying to check my temperature in those moments of calling and texting. Not that we didn't talk throughout the day, that's not accurate, but it was something different about this particular day with his phone calls and his text message, and just the consistency of everything. His tone was different, his attitude was different, his demeanor was different. Like, I could see all of the things that were clearly different, right? I could see it all. And so I can't remember. I can't remember if I start bringing the bags down before I left that morning, or if I waited until that afternoon to bring them down. That I cannot remember. But I do remember everything sitting at the door, like at our front door. I had everything inside, of course, but I had everything sitting at the front door. And his sister got there, and maybe she texted me and said, "Hey, I'm on my way," or something. I can't remember. And so John could see all of his bags at the door. Like, he could literally see everything at the door. It was so much stuff, because I'm not just putting out a man. I'm putting out a part of myself. Like, I've been with this guy for, like, at this point, we're married for about 14 years. So I'm putting out over half of my life at this point, because we were like just a little shy of 20 years into a relationship. 14 married, and then 5 that we had prior to marriage. So we were like just a few months shy of 20 years in a relationship. 20 years. So I'm not just putting out a man. I'm not just putting out a husband or a boyfriend or somebody that I've been shacking up with. Like, I'm putting out half of my life. So there's so many things that are sitting in the door and so many things that are in this bag. And I remember like just feeling good. Like I wasn't hurt, I wasn't crying, I wasn't angry, I wasn't mad, and I think I didn't have those emotions to give because I had given so many of those emotions before. I didn't have any of those emotions left to give. I had already given everything that I had to John at this point. He had gotten all the tears and all the sadness and all the anger and all the frustration. Like, I'd given it all. So his sister pulls up and, she's standing outside, and I'm like, John, your sister's here. And we're, walking the bags out. And so we would like walk the bags out there to her car, and then she would kind of just, put the bags in the car, however. And she was just like, I don't know if I'm going to have room for everything. And he was like, well, don't worry about it. If you don't have room for it, don't worry about it, because I'll be back. And I said, no, you won't. I was like, let's make room if we can. And so we kept pushing and bending and prying, like all of the things, to the point where we ended up getting every single bag in the car. And I gave her all of his medicines. I gave her, his paperwork. He got sized for the boot. So I don't know if the boot was back yet or if we had just got the boot like the day before. I can't remember. But he got the boot, or we either got sized for the boot. I gave her all the paperwork. I gave her the doctor's information, like everything. And she was like, well, can you, put me as the point of contact for his doctors and stuff now? And I was like, yeah, so I need to call the doctors and do that. And I had not done that yet. And I didn't get a chance to do it, honey, because his mom was all over it. So his mom had already called the next day, and she had already taken my name off of all of his things. So even when I called to tell them, I didn't even have access. They was like, oh, your name has already been removed. So somebody else's name is there. And so now we're technically not allowed to talk to you anymore, Ms. Tillman, even though we've had rapport with you for all of this time. And I'm like, you know what? Don't worry about it. I'm okay. But so I'm saying that to her, and I go to, the kids come out, and, each one of the kids go and give him a hug. Or let me take that back. Maybe just a baby girl. My son and daughter was still pretty upset with him. And I don't really remember what it was like for them that day. I can't even remember if they came outside. I know the baby girl came outside with me. And I said, go give your dad a hug. And she went and gave him a hug. And I went over there to give him a hug. And I said, just do me one favor, John. Because at this point, I know things are going to be different. And, even though I never, even though my relationship with his family was always in and out, his family loved our children. So I never worried about his family with our kids, even though they ended up not dealing with them anymore. I never would have suspected that because I knew how much they loved our children. So my concern wasn't with his family and the kids. My concern was with him. And I was like, just do me one favor. Promise me that you will not walk away from your children. Promise me that you're still going to call them and that you're still going to check on them. Promise me that you're still going to be a part of their life. This is attached to trauma at this point for me, right? Because I grew up without my dad. My dad went to prison when I was 7 years old, and I didn't see him again until I was 21, getting ready to take a paternity test to see if he was even really my dad. Because at 16, I found out that his family didn't believe so. So for me, this was attached to a trauma. I married this guy and I stayed with him all of these years, and I took all of this toxicity and all of this disrespect and all of these behaviors. I took that from him because I never wanted my children to grow up without their dad like I did. I didn't want that for them. I never wanted them to not have their dad. I never wanted them to not have a relationship. I never wanted them to feel the brunt of me being a single parent. Even though I was a single parent for years and I didn't even realize it until later on. And so he said, I promise. His words, I promise. And he got in the car and they drove off. And so I remember it also being like a birthday celebration for his mom, and they go to the birthday celebration, and we didn't go. So at this point, like, we don't know what's going on. I get a phone call from his cousin the next morning, and she's like, what in the world is going on? And I'm like, what are you talking about? And she's like, you put John out? Like, you told them you're divorcing John and all of this and that. And the mom had, decided that she was going to spread it throughout the family. The mom even sent out messages. And I got this from the cousin as well as from one of the aunts that I used to be really close with, and I'll never forget the words of this aunt. She told me that the message came out for her not to talk to me anymore. They was told nobody have contact with Sharon anymore. She's leaving John. She's leaving him because now he's hurt and he can't take care of her and he can't pay their bills. And so now she's leaving him. I don't want anybody in this family to have contact with her. That was the message that went forth. And two things, right? That's a lie. I'm not leaving John because John can't take care of me. I worked 2 jobs. I didn't work 2 jobs just because I wanted to, right? That was number one. But then number 2 was, not one time in that message did we ever hold John accountable for what he did. Clearly, this would be why John thought that he could lie his way out of the truth that was right in front of me with the evidence, right? Because somebody believes the lies that he tell even when the truth is very evident. And so never once was John held accountable for John's behavior. It was all on me. I'm leaving him because he's sick. I'm leaving him because he can't take care of me. Nobody in this family is to have any contact with her. And the aunt specifically said to me, we have our own relationship. She was like, I hear what she's saying, but we have our own relationship. And I don't want at all to be in the middle of that. And I'm not going to stop talking to you just because she said that. Even though later on down the road, she did. She did. But just to hear that and to know like, you're going above and beyond to try to hurt me when clearly I've been hurt enough, right? Like, now that I've made the decision to walk away from something that clearly at this point, right? I didn't just walk away because I wanted to. I walk away because I needed to. Like, it's one thing for you to disrespect me all of these years, but then to disrespect me in front of our children. I'm raising 2 daughters. What kind of example do I set for my daughters? What am I saying to them? Like, what am I telling them to allow? Dad or no dad, what am I telling them to allow? What am I saying to them by allowing their dad to mistreat me in this way, to even where they can see it? So I had to make that decision. And as a mother first, as a wife, like, you would hope that somebody would see that, and not condemn you for that. So not only did she tell that to the family, she told that to outsider people. I had people who were calling me saying, I heard that you and John are getting divorced. I heard that you left John. Well, his mom said, or some of the family on the other side was like, yeah, she's leaving John because John can't pay the bills in that house no more. When clearly you guys were wrong, right? Because it wasn't all John's money in the house that was paying the bills. So if you think that I was with John all of this time just for John's money, you're sadly mistaken. It's a lot of men in the world with money. John wasn't all I could get. Clearly, I was with him because I loved him. I was with him because he was my husband. I was with him because he was the father or the dad to our children. But I was also with him because I wanted to prove to myself and maybe to other people that we could make it work, that we could figure it out, that all things were bad, but that one day it was going to turn. One day it was going to get better. And that we would be able to look back on our marriage and our relationship, and we would be able to clearly say, these are all of the things that we've been through and we overcame because we stayed together and we stuck with God. And like, how many times do you see people in marriages do that? We stay together waiting for the day to change. And when the day never changes, we realize that we've been wasting so much time and so many years of investment into something that clearly is not going to work. Now, am I saying every marriage that goes through is doomed? Absolutely not. I am a firm believer in some marriages go through things, and every marriage is going to go through things. Let me be very clear, because marriage is seasonal, right? So you got your seasons in marriage, and you'll have those seasons in marriage where that one particular season, I think it was Miles Monroe who uses the analogy, and he's like, the sun is out. It's sunny outside. The sun is out. Like, it feels good. Like you can put your shorts on, you got your sandals on, it's all of the things are great. And then fall comes, but then winter comes. And with winter, you need boots and you need scarves and you need gloves and you need big puffy jackets and things. And when you have to put on all these layers and things are so heavy, like sometimes it's the summer that you have to go back and reflect on, when things were a lot easier, when things were a lot warmer, when things were a lot lighter. So marriage is seasonal. It doesn't mean that every day you're going to wake up and you're going to want to be married to your spouse. Like, I like to be really real. But it means that every day I'm going to wake up with the intent or the intentionality that I'm choosing to be here, and I'm going to do whatever it takes to make it work. And so clearly for me, I was making that choice even if it didn't align with what God had for me next. Because in my mind, I'm like, if I'm doing what's right, if I'm faithful, if I'm not committing adultery, if I love you, if I'm saved, if I'm living this life the right way, then clearly you're going to bless it for me. God, you're going to do it because I'm doing the things right. But that could have been the very reason why he went through the things in his body and why the Lord allowed it to happen the way that it happened, because he wanted, Sharon, I see you. But if this is not the plan that I have, your prayers are amiss. Because the Bible says that God will give us the desires of our heart, right? That's what the Bible says. And so when we clearly think about that scripture, we think about anything that I desire, the Lord is going to give it to me, even if it doesn't align with what he wants for us. But what we need to think about in that scripture is how the scripture even says when we delight ourselves in him. And in order for us to delight ourselves in him, then we have to be okay with the things that he wants for us. It's aligning his desires and his wants for us. We are aligning our desires and our wants for us to align with his. That's what happens when you delight yourself in something, or you delight yourself in someone. It's going into the things that he wants for us. And so if my desire is to be married and my desire is to stay married, and God is like, your desire isn't aligning with what I have for you next. Because we love We love ourselves so much, or not. No, no, let me take that. I retract that. Sometimes we love the situations that we want for ourselves so much. We think we love ourselves. And sometimes we want what we want so badly that we don't even realize what it does to us, or even what our Father thinks about it while we're there, because he's still our Father, right? And so if you think about your natural dad, how does your natural dad feel when you're in a relationship and you're being abused or you're being mistreated? Like, any natural father reacts to that. Why is our heavenly Father any different? To not react to the things that he can see, that clearly God knew all of the things that were happening from the beginning. I just didn't know. So I'm on my knees and I'm on my face and I'm praying for John and I'm praying for John, and I'm praying for our marriage, and I'm praying that the Lord would just help me so that I can be the wife that I need to be in the marriage, clearly. And he's like, but I can see all of the things that you can't see. So how am I going to reveal these things to you? Like, we don't like the way that God packages things. Sometimes we don't like the way he allows things to come out and allows things to happen. But the reality is, this is what he does. This is who he is. And however he decides to let it out, as long as it gets out, right? And so that's what it was. And so that's what it was. That's what it was. I didn't even want to rush past that moment because I wanted to try to put another statement there, but I'm like, no, just rest in that. Rest in that. I don't want to rush past this story. I want to rest in it. Because it was a process for me to get to this place. And you get the brunt of it. I'm trying to give you as many details as I can, but there were so many more things happening behind the scenes. There were so many more things. And then to go through all that you've gone through and to put up with all of the things you put up with, and then for your name to be scandalized. And it's almost like God is saying, but you don't have to clear your name. And I'm like, clearly, God, but I do have to clear my name because you don't hear what they're saying about me. Like, okay, you do hear what they're saying about me, but God, like, and he's like, but you don't have to clear your name. You don't have to fight for you. And I'm like, but I want to fight for me. I want to defend myself. I want to defend my name. I want people to know who John really was, because John is now out making me to be the bad guy and I didn't do anything wrong. Like, I need people to know that John disrespected me in front of our children, and that is why we're here. I need the people to know. And God is like, girl, I'm not arguing with you. Okay, so like, I don't know how God talks to y'all, right? But clearly, he'd be like, yeah, no, I ain't doing it. I'm not arguing with you. You don't have to fight for yourself. And so I didn't. Not then. Later on, I did. And I'll jump into that the next episode. But in that moment, I didn't. I was quiet. And it was hard. It was really hard. But I was quiet. And in my mind, I'm like, okay, I've been good. I've been faithful. Like, I'm a good person. I'm a good wife. Like, clearly, I didn't deserve this. I've been with John most of my life, over half of my life at this point. Half of my teens, all of my 20s, half of my 30s. I've been with this guy almost all my life. I want to have fun. I don't know what it feels like to be a single adult. I don't know what it feels like to go out with your friends and to go out with your girlfriends and to have fun. And like, I don't know what any of those things mean, because like, clearly I was a wife and I was in the house and I served the Lord and I loved God and I wanted to be a good example for my children and I wanted to be a good wife to John. And so all of these other parts of my life, I just didn't have. I got married young. We got married in our early 20s. I got pregnant with my son at and had my son right before I turned 20. So it was like there were so many things that I just didn't even have an opportunity to do. I didn't go off to college and stay in a dorm and do all of the things with my friends. I didn't do that. So when my girlfriends took girl trips, I wasn't privy to that. I wasn't able to go to that because at this point I'm a wife and I'm a mom and my life looks different. So I need to align myself with wives and mothers who look like me in this season. And so my whole group was different. And so at this point, I'm like, wow, now I'm actually single. Let's see what this feels like. Okay. So I'm going to stop there and we'll pick up with this next week. Listen, I said a lot in this episode. And so if you do nothing else, I want you to really get some of the key value points that we're taking away. Like, oftentimes we definitely find ourselves trying so hard, right? Like literally just trying so hard to change the plan of God for our lives, to enact the plan that we want to have, and to make sure that if we do it textbook style, then it comes out textbook ready, right? But clearly God's plan for us, and it's really being sensitive to his spirit, but it's also being sensitive to the things that he's saying and being okay with what God's allowing and not trying to fight everything that doesn't feel right. Because a lot of times God never takes us on the path that feels right. Like God could definitely take us on a straight road that's paved, but he's like, why? That's boring. That's boring. Let's go back here and let's hit this path and let's get on a dirt road where all the rocks and stones and all of the things are. And like it's a few, like things you got to jump over. It's a few hurdles back there. It's a few obstacles. Like, let's go this way. Like, why we don't want to go on the paved road? That's boring. Let's take a different route. And that's the way God does us. And so sometimes on the route, because the journey is hard, we get lost. We get stuck. Sometimes we sit down and we take a break and then we forget to get back up and go again. Sometimes we really do feel like that even though the land has been like Jesus promising or God promising the Israelites the promised land, because it seemed like it took them forever to get there and they could never see it. Like it was so far from reach that they got discouraged on their way and it took them so much longer to get there. And so if we ever equate our lives to that, and sometimes on that bumpy road and that road full of obstacles and that road that's hard, like we find ourselves, we get stuck there and we get tired of fighting, we get tired of walking, we get tired of persevering, and we stop. And we start to feel like there is no light at the end of the tunnel. We start to feel like there is no promised land. Like this is all talk, but it doesn't really exist because things are so hard. And we start to feel like if things are this hard, then it's not going to get better. It's only going to get worse. And sometimes things do get worse because a lot of times things get worse before they get better. And we start to feel like that everything is falling apart and this is just the way that life is. And then we have no expectation of anything different. We have no expectation of anything greater. And we find ourselves stuck. We find ourselves stuck. And so I want to encourage you today that even if it's hard, even if your road is long and it's bumpy and you don't feel like you have on the right shoes for the journey that you are facing, and you're tired of persevering and you're tired of pursuing and you're sweaty and you're hot and you need water and you need manna, I want to encourage you to not give up, to stay the course, to not stop, to not derail. Don't forfeit your promised land, because I promise you, your promised land exists. Don't forfeit your promised land. Stay the course. Trust God. Lean on him. Depend on him. And know that he's got you. And know that if he's got you there, he knows that you can make it to the other side. Stand on the solid rock. Stand on the foundation of your Father. And in your weakness, allow him to be made perfect. His strength is made perfect in our weakness. So allow his strength to be made perfect when you're weak. And don't feel like you've got to be so strong. That's my encouragement for you today. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to another episode of A Journey to Identity. I love you guys for real, and I will see you next week. Have an amazing one.